It's hard to escape the phenomenon that is the Jaecoo J7. This thing was only launched in the middle of last year, but it's everywhere and I've been dying to find out how it drives. But this is no ordinary J7. This is the PHEV, the plug-in hybrid version. As the first of its type to be even remotely considered affordable in Malaysia, does this actually make any sense to the average Malaysian buyer? Is the Jaecoo J7 any good to drive in the first place? And are we going to see a swarm of these on the road too? We'll ponder the answer to these and more in this review. Let's go.
The Jaecoo J7 PHEV is priced at 158,800 ringgit, which is 10,000 ringgit more than the petrol all-wheel drive model. You do lose out on, well, all-wheel drive, but in return you get more power and much lower fuel consumption. Whether that's worth the extra 10 grand, that's for you to decide. What is clear is that the J7 PHEV is by far and away the cheapest plug-in hybrid on the market. The BMW 330e has been discontinued, so the next cheapest is now the Volvo X60 T8 Recharge, and that's double the price.
Let's just get to the obvious bit first. The vast majority of people who bought this car did so because of the way it looked. Jaecoo has managed a clever trick here. Build something that looks vaguely like a Range Rover, price it for way less money than expected, and profit. It's bold, boxy and brash. There's simply nothing else like it on the road at this price. But I'd stop short of calling it premium. I think the stance is a bit weak. Some of the lines look haphazardly placed, and this big toothy grille is a bit unimaginative and old-fashioned. But I'm certainly not arguing with the way the J7 turns heads. I mean, just look at it. There's not much that differentiates the PHEV from the regular J7, at least on the outside. The door mirrors are different. They're sleeker, and they do look a bit out of place next to the rectangular design. But I've always felt that the previous mirrors were a bit big and blocky, and these at least should be more aerodynamic. Then there are the wheels, still 19 inches in diameter, but with a new closed design, again for better aerodynamics. A lot of people like the petrol car's multi-spoke wheels, but I wasn't a fan. I think this is a much nicer option. Then there's the checkered flag pattern on the side strips, matching the DRLs and the taillights. It's a neat addition in my book. And finally, you no longer get those horrible fake tailpipes that Hafiz complained about previously. Result. Just like on the regular J7, the PHEV model gets these cool pop-out door handles. One thing that has annoyed me is this touch button for the keyless entry system. The driver's side has one, but not the passenger side. And while the handles do pop out when you walk up to the car, there's no sensor on the underside, so you can't just pull this handle to unlock it. You have to press this button first. Now I know this car does come with proximity locking and unlocking, so it unlocks when you walk up to the car and it locks up when you walk away, but it doesn't always work. And when it doesn't, this car can be a bit of a pain in the backside just to get in. But once you get in, wow, what an interior. It's just as stylish as on the outside, and it all stands up to the touch too. There's soft touch materials in most places. You get nice shiny silver trim, there's interesting textures everywhere. Yeah, this part of the premium experience, Jaecoo has gotten absolutely bang on. The PHEV specific changes are a bit more involved here. You get a new center console without a gear selector, that's now a stock. The steering column, Mercedes-Benz style, and in its place sits a wireless charger, two cup holders, and this row of buttons for your drive mode, the door locks, the hazards, and for you to choose between EV and hybrid mode. With most of these buttons for the powertrain, you would think that the auto button is for the transmission, right? But no, it's for the aircon. That's a bit weird. You also no longer get a dedicated parking brake button. That now activates automatically when you press the P button. Also, you no longer get the petrol J7's tissue box holder, but you do still get cool storage underneath this armrest, which is nice. The PHEV model also gets new door cards, which are a bit less rugged and off-roady. No more exposed Allen bolt heads, just a simple door handle and an armrest on top of which sit these new Proton Irma 7 style window switches. Just like on those, these are a bit backwards. You push on them to open the windows, pull on them to close. These are also a bit weird, but you get used to them. Of course, you then get to another car and then those are a bit backwards, but that's another story. You'll also probably notice that there are no physical door mirror buttons. How do you adjust them, you ask? We'll get to that in a second. Of course, your eyes will be drawn to all the tech that Jaecoo has crammed into this car, including a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster, a head-up display, and the massive 14.8-inch portrait touchscreen. Then there are the toys like the big panoramic sunroof, the built-in air purifier, the 8-speaker Sony sound system, and the 64-color ambient lighting system. Again, just like on a Mercedes. Unlike that Merc, this car comes with a musical rhythm mode that changes the color based on what's playing through the speakers. It's not a bit, it's really hyperactive. And it's distracting and it's just not my thing. But hey, it's there if you want the whole car to light up like a disco ball and you want to tell the whole world just how tasteless you are. Then there are the seats, which can lie all the way flat. Couple that with the PHEV's ability to have the aircon on without the engine running, and this is actually a nice place to stop and take a nap, which if you ever had to drive long distances after a big lunch is a really good thing. But it's far from perfect. The seats are super comfortable and supportive, but the headrest is a bit far back relative to the seat, which means you either have to crane your neck, meaning that you'll get sore after a long journey, or you lean back and basically drive while looking down your nose. What's the point of the headrest then? But all that pales in comparison to this screen. Look, I'll level with you. I know you bought this car based on this screen, and I get the appeal. It's really cool. The first time you put Apple CarPlay on, which is wireless by the way, you are blown away because it just looks like a massive iPad. And the icons are big, it's crisp and colorful, maps look fantastic, the 360 cam works brilliantly. You can't help but be drawn by it. And if you set every little function of this car just so, first time out, and then you just live in Apple CarPlay or Android Auto for the rest of the time you have the car, it will be awesome. But to do that, you first have to deal with the built-in system, and it just wants to fight you the whole time. First of all, the English translation is hit or miss. Half the time you just cannot decipher what any given setting means. The menus are also all over the place. Earlier I said that there are no physical door mirror controls. That's right, just like Tesla and like Smart, they've been moved to the screen and the steering wheel controls. You would think that the logical place to put that button would be in quick control, or at worst, vehicle settings. But no, they're in vehicle comfort, together with the seat controls. There are other issues, like the fact that whenever I start the car, the volume is never where I left it, or that there's no way to see the hybrid system's energy flow through the instrument cluster, so I have to leave Apple CarPlay to do it, or that there's no quick way to get back into Apple CarPlay, not even through the voice control. And I know that I can be very nitpicky about this sort of thing, but when you're paying this much for a car, I think you deserve to expect more. Now, can I talk about other stuff now? I promise there are good things about this car. One of those is at the back, where the J7 seats are really comfortable and spacious. You sit really rather reclined with lots of back and under thigh support. That last bit is really rare in a car, by the way. And legroom and headroom are both excellent. You also get your usual USB ports and your armrest with 2 cup holders, as well as shoulder switches for adjusting the front passenger seat. It is quite weird that you only get 1 rear air vent shared across 3 passengers, but after everything I complained about earlier, I'll take it honestly. The other good thing is the boot, which is big. At 500 litres, it trumps the Toyota Corolla Cross and especially the Honda HR-V. It's also 76 litres larger than the petrol J7s, despite the fact there is a battery underneath here, and that's because there's no full-size spare tyre, just a repair kit. You can of course fold down the rear seats for more room, and there's also some storage space underneath this floor for you to store your 3-pin charger. By the way, this car does come with a hands-free opening tailgate, but it works by sensing the key in your pocket rather than a kick motion, just like the facelifted Proton X70. That's all well and good, but it does mean that when you're carrying stuff out of the car, you can't close the tailgate when your hands are full. Now, let's go for a drive. Under the bonnet, the J7 PHEV is quite a bit different from the regular J7. Out goes the 1.6-litre engine, and in its place is a 1.5-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine from the Chery Omoda 5. It makes 143 PS and 215 Nm of torque, and it is paired with an electric motor that makes 204 PS and 310 Nm of torque, leading to a total system output of 347 PS and 525 Nm of torque. That's a lot, and it's much more than what you get in the petrol J7. But the performance figures don't really reflect that. This car will get from 0 to 100 km per hour in 8.5 seconds, which is quite a bit quicker than the petrol J7, but it's not what you expect for a car with 300 plus horsepower. Top speed is also limited to 180 km per hour. Now, one thing you have to remember is that this car is not the typical premium plug-in hybrid car that we're all used to. It doesn't have a normal petrol powertrain with an electric motor attached to it. In this car, the electric motor is more deeply integrated into the rest of the powertrain. One can't really function without the other. In this regard, it's more akin to something like a Toyota Prius. One of the downsides of this approach is that this car doesn't feel quite as fast as the power figure suggests. You only really feel it at lower speeds, and even then it wastes a lot of that away through spinning the front tires. And yes, this plug-in hybrid version is only available with front-wheel drive. Above sort of walking pace, this car feels reasonably quick, but you have the sense that this car's horses are not entirely in the stable. Something like a BMW 330e, that feels like a car that has 300 plus horsepower. This doesn't, at least initially. Keep your throttle pinned, and then it starts to gain a bit of momentum, and suddenly you're at big speeds really rather quickly. You get a sense that the powertrain is working about half a second behind your inputs. That also seems to be the case when you let off the throttle. You accelerate hard and then you let go of the throttle, and then it feels like the throttle is still stuck open, which can be quite disconcerting. Fortunately, when you're driving it slower in day-to-day traffic, it's not really an issue. The main benefit of this powertrain is the efficiency. Jaecoo claims that this thing will do 4.9 liters per 100 kilometers, and even with the battery depleted, the fuel consumption only rises up to 5.99 liters per 100 kilometers. And at least in my usage, these figures are very conservative. Now, I'm not the most light-footed person, as you will all well know. And even during my commute here, driving in a not particularly efficient manner, I still managed around 3 and a bit liters per 100 kilometers. That is seriously impressive. Jaecoo says that with a full charge and a full 6-liter tank of petrol, you'll get a total range of 1,200 kilometers, and that seems entirely believable.
This efficiency was proven through an eco drive from Singapore to Hat Yai in Thailand. We drove a total of 1,066 kilometers, and despite using aircon and driving normally throughout the entire journey, we still had 190 kilometers of range remaining, resulting in an effective range of 1,256 kilometers on a single tank of petrol and a single full battery charge. That's seriously impressive.
But what about if you want to drive only in electric mode? The J7 PHEV has a claimed WLTP pure electric range of 88 kilometers. Now, I tested this and I found that the car would do about 80 kilometers before it forced me back into hybrid mode. And even then, it still had an estimated range of about 20 kilometers. That's about what you got from a premium plug-in hybrid at full charge from just about 5 years ago, and this car has that amount in reserve. To access that reserve power, you have to go back into the settings and select EV Plus mode. But Jaecoo says that this is only for extreme emergency cases. And given that this car only really works with both the petrol and electric sources, I would suggest that you use that reserve wisely. The other good thing about this powertrain is that it's really rather smooth and it makes hardly any noise at all. In most situations, you really can't tell whether this car is running on electric or petrol power. It is that quiet. Only if you're accelerating really hard or if you're driving very quickly that you'd hear even a hint of engine noise. You had a really good sound installation and probably the front double glazing to thank for that. The integration of petrol and electric power is such that it really just feels like a very well sorted CVT transmission. Just put your foot on the throttle and the car just goes. I really do think that in normal everyday driving, these Chinese plug-in hybrids with their dedicated hybrid transmissions are the way to go. Okay, so you don't get the performance of the more traditional German plug-in hybrid powertrains, but it is so smooth and so quiet. It's responsive enough, and the efficiency of this car, even if you don't plug it in all that often, really makes this thing more suited to the kind of driving that we have over here. So the powertrain, I'm all for. The rest of the package, I am not so sure. Let's start with the brakes, which are really quite sharp, making them quite difficult to modulate. Couple that with the instant throttle response of the electric motor and you get a car that makes you feel like you've all of a sudden forgotten how to drive. My mom, bless her, thinks I'm still learning how to drive. She got in this car and she immediately said, "John, you're pressing on the brakes too hard." And I said, I'm really only just brushing my foot on the brake pedal. If I put any sort of pressure on it, she'd be through the windscreen. There are many different settings for the brakes. There's brake pitch control, you got mid and sport settings. None of them work. But I have spent some time with the car and I got it to not exactly exact science, let's just call it vague science. The car does have quite good regenerative braking, so that does help a little bit. And then there's the ride. Yes, I know that this car does come with a big and therefore quite heavy battery at the back, and therefore the suspension does need to be tied down a bit to support it. The upshot of this is that the ride can be a bit knobbly. The primary ride over undulations, that's generally really good, but it's the secondary ride over ruts and potholes that the car can crash into. It's not helped by the fact that this car rides on 19s. And overall you get a sense that this car doesn't give you the same sort of comfortable, cushy ride that you'd expect from a Chinese car. I mean, my mom drives a Proton X70 and that car rides way better than this one. And even with the rather stiff ride, the body control isn't all that good either, and that brings us to another issue, which is the handling. Now, I'm absolutely not expecting this car to be a sports car or anything like that, so the fact that this car understeers, rolls quite a bit, doesn't have a lot of grip coming from the Camho extra tires, that's all fine. I don't really care about any of that. To me, the problem is the steering. It's really vague, even by Chinese car standards. It's very imprecise, it's really quite light, it gives no feedback whatsoever. You just turn the wheel and the car sort of meanders in sort of the vague direction that you're pointing at. That also means that the car does wander about in its own lane a little bit, and you constantly have to make adjustments to keep it in the straight and narrow. Now, this car does come with all the driver assistance systems that you would expect, including level 2 semi-autonomous driving. But this system veers into the sort of Tesla, I don't really quite trust it category. When it works really well, and I don't really have to mind it even on really quite sharp corners. But when it doesn't work, it really doesn't work, especially at night, or if it's raining, or if there aren't really that many discernible road markings. It just sort of gives up the ghost. The more time I spend with the J7 PHEV, the more I'm convinced about the powertrain, which is really quite good, and the less I'm convinced about the package surrounding the powertrain. You know, the actual J7. Yes, the interior materials all are very nice, and yes, you get lots of dazzling tech. But everywhere I turn in this car, there is some little flaw that just takes the shine off everything. Each one of those issues that I have with this car, in isolation, I am totally fine with. But put them all together and you get a car that frustrates a little bit, because you know that there's a good car hiding underneath all that. And all these things could be forgiven on a car that maybe costs less. But Jaecoo has used the word premium on this car, and that gives it a level of expectation that this car simply can't fulfill. Look, I know these things are subjective, what I like and don't like is probably going to be very different from your personal preferences. And I know there are people who bought the J7 and loved it to bits, and I'm not trying to take away from their purchasing decision at all, because I understand the appeal. It looks fresh, it looks unique, and there are plenty of toys. And if that's all you're looking for in a car, then more power to you. I support you fully. The problem with a car like this that trades only on its looks and its toys is that one day somebody will come up with something cooler, that looks fresher, with more toys, and this won't be the hot young thing anymore. And what you're then left with is a car that's lacking a bit of substance, and then it's just going to frustrate. Or maybe it's just me. I also have to preface this by saying that this particular unit may not be fully representative of the cars that actual customers will get. This car is made in China. The ones that customers get is made in Malaysia, in Shah Alam. And maybe the finalized customer cars will solve all the issues that I have with this car. But I can only review a car as it stands. I can't review it based on the promise that something may or may not be fixed. And as it stands, this car does have its fair few flaws. Don't get me wrong, the Jaecoo J7 is still a bargain. And if anyone's wondering whether the plug-in hybrid version would add to the ownership experience, I say it does. At the very least, it doesn't hurt it. But this car is lacking that final bit of polish, and if Jaecoo is actually serious about being a proper premium upmarket brand, and if it has any aspirations whatsoever about challenging BMW and Mercedes, then I'm afraid it still has a little bit of a mountain still to climb.